The landmark hotel in London was draped in ivory and gold, its grand ballroom filled with 500 guests who represented the upper echelons of British society. My sister Charlotte's wedding to Lord James Pemberton was the culmination of our mother's 30-year social climbing campaign. A title, a country estate, and entrance into circles she'd only dreamed about. I stood near the coat check, watching guests arrive in their designer gowns and bespoke suits. Members of Parliament, minor royalty, business magnates. Charlotte had assembled everyone who mattered in London society. This was her coronation, and our mother intended to savor every moment. Eleanor. There you are. My mother rushed over, her champagne silk gown rustling with each step. She grabbed my arm and pulled me further behind a marble column. What are you doing standing where people can see you? I was waiting for the ceremony to start. Well, wait somewhere less visible. She glanced nervously toward the entrance where Lord Pemberton's family was greeting guests. Keep her away from the important guests, she hissed to a nearby usher, not bothering to lower her voice. The last thing we need is questions about the unemployed one. The usher looked uncomfortable but nodded. Of course, Mrs. Morrison. Mom, I'm not unemployed. You're between positions, dear. It's basically the same thing. She smoothed her dress anxiously. Charlotte has worked so hard to make this match. I won't have you embarrassing us in front of the Pembertons by talking about your situation. Just stay quiet and try not to draw attention. My sister Charlotte appeared in her custom Vera Wang gown, looking like something from a royal portrait. Her 4 bridesmaids flanked her, all daughters of prominent families, all perfectly coiffed and confident. Is she hidden? Charlotte asked our mother without looking at me. Behind the column, out of sight. Good. Lady Pemberton already asked about family, and I told her Eleanor was traveling for work. Let's keep it vague. Charlotte finally glanced at me. Try not to talk to anyone important, please. Just smile and stay in the background. They swept away toward the ceremony, leaving me standing with the usher, who at least had the grace to look embarrassed. The ceremony was beautiful. St. Margaret's Church, the same place where Churchill married. Charlotte and James exchanged vows that emphasized family legacy and traditional values. Our mother cried elegant tears that she'd probably practiced in front of a mirror. I sat in the back row, far from the family section, positioned where I wouldn't appear in any official photographs. Around me sat distant cousins and plus ones who didn't quite make the social cut. My phone buzzed during the recessional. 6 missed calls from Downing Street. 8 text messages from my senior policy advisor. All marked urgent. My stomach dropped. I'd specifically arranged complete coverage so I could attend Charlotte's wedding without government emergencies. The Prime Minister was supposed to be at the G7 summit in Cornwall. Everything had been coordinated to give me this one day for family obligations. I slipped out during the signing of the register and called back immediately. Eleanor Morrison speaking. Chief Economic Advisor Morrison, thank God. My senior advisor sounded panicked. The Chinese delegation walked out of the G7 summit. They're threatening to withdraw from the entire trade framework unless we can provide immediate response to their concerns. The Prime Minister is returning to London and needs your analysis before the emergency session tonight. I'm at my sister's wedding. My briefing materials are at the office. The Prime Minister is already en route to the landmark hotel. He saw the location on your calendar and realized you were attending a family event at the same venue. He's coming directly to you. I felt the blood drain from my face. He's coming here? To the wedding reception. He needs the trade framework analysis before the Chinese deadline at midnight. This could collapse 2 years of negotiations. He paused. Also, Eleanor. Security did a venue sweep and noticed your name placement on the seating chart. The PM was not pleased. What do you mean, name placement? You're seated at table 23. Near the service entrance. Behind a decorative screen. Of course I was. The reception was already underway when I returned. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids cascading from towering centerpieces, a 20-piece orchestra. Charlotte and James held court at the head table on a raised platform, surrounded by the cream of British society. I found my assigned seat at table 23, literally hidden behind a decorative screen that separated the real reception from overflow seating. From here I could hear the party but barely see it. My table companions were Charlotte's old university acquaintances who hadn't quite maintained their social relevance. "Are you family?" one woman asked, reading my place card. "I'm the bride's sister." "Oh." She exchanged glances with the others at the table. "I didn't realize Charlotte had a sister. She's never mentioned you." The toasts began. Lord Pemberton's father spoke about family lineage and the importance of marrying well. Charlotte's best friend gave a speech about her determination and social grace. Then my mother stood up. "I'm so proud of Charlotte," she began, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "She's achieved everything a mother could hope for. She made the right choices, pursued the right goals, and today she's marrying into one of England's finest families." He paused and I knew what was coming. "Not all children make us equally proud," she continued, her eyes deliberately not finding me behind the screen. "But Charlotte has always been the one who understood what truly matters. She's never been a disappointment." 500 guests absorbed the implication. Several people glanced toward table 23, where the disappointing daughter had been hidden. That's when I heard the commotion at the ballroom entrance. Security entered first, diplomatic protection group officers in plain clothes but unmistakable. They were doing quick assessments, coordinating with hotel security. The kind of protection detail that accompanied the Prime Minister. Then Prime Minister David Harrison walked into Charlotte's reception, flanked by his private secretary and 2 senior cabinet members. The orchestra stopped mid-song. Conversations died. Every person in the ballroom turned to stare as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom entered the wedding reception. His eyes scanned the room and found the decorative screen hiding table 23. His expression shifted from professional concern to visible anger. "Eleanor." He walked directly toward my hidden table, past the head platform where Charlotte and James sat frozen, past the prominent guests and titled families, straight to the service entrance area where the unemployed disappointment had been concealed. "Prime Minister Harrison, I apologize." "Don't apologize. I need the Chinese trade analysis immediately, but first." He looked at table 23, then at the elaborate head table, then back at me. "Why are you seated here?" "Family seating arrangements, Prime Minister." "Family arrangements." He turned to address the entire ballroom, his voice carrying that natural authority that commanded nations. "Good evening, everyone. I apologize for interrupting this celebration, but we have an urgent economic crisis that requires Eleanor Morrison's immediate expertise." The silence was absolute. "For those who may not know," the Prime Minister continued, looking directly at my mother, "Eleanor Morrison is my chief economic advisor. She's been instrumental in every major economic policy decision over the past 4 years. She designed the post-pandemic recovery framework that saved 3 million jobs. She negotiated the trade agreements that generated $40 billion in new revenue. Last month, she prevented an economic crisis between the UK and EU that could have cost us hundreds of billions." My mother had gone completely pale. "Eleanor is currently coordinating trade negotiations with 12 nations simultaneously," the Prime Minister said. "The Chinese delegation specifically requested her presence at the G7 summit because she's the only advisor they trust to understand their economic concerns. And you seated her behind a decorative screen at table 23. Charlotte looked like she might faint. Lord Pemberton's father had stood up, his face showing shock and calculation. Prime Minister Harrison turned to me. "Eleanor, I need the trade framework analysis. The Chinese are threatening withdrawal and you're the only person who can salvage this. Let's use the hotel's conference room." "Of course, Prime Minister." "And Eleanor?" He looked at my mother again. "When you return, if you choose to return, you'll be seated at the head table. My chief economic advisor doesn't sit behind screens. Ever." As we walked toward the exit, his security detail creating a protective corridor, I heard the whispers exploding around us. Phones emerging. People Googling my name. My mother's voice, sharp with panic, trying to explain something to Lady Pemberton. In the hotel's executive suite, we spent 90 minutes coordinating emergency responses. The Chinese concerns were complex but manageable with the right concessions. I pulled up my analysis, walked the Prime Minister through 3 different scenarios, and helped craft a response that would keep the trade framework intact. "This is brilliant work, Eleanor," the Prime Minister said, reviewing my recommendations. "The Chinese will accept this. You've just saved 2 years of negotiations and potentially hundreds of billions in trade. Thank you, Prime Minister. Yao. He closed his folder and looked at me seriously. How long has your family been treating you like this? Most of my life. They know I work for the government, but they've never asked for details. They assumed I was unemployed because I'm not married into aristocracy like Charlotte. Your mother called you unemployed. In front of wedding guests. She's been telling people I'm between positions for the past year. The Prime Minister shook his head. I've negotiated with hostile foreign governments that showed more respect to junior staff than your family shows to you. He stood. You don't have to go back to that reception. I thought about Charlotte's perfect wedding, about being hidden behind screens, about years of being the disappointment. No. I don't think I will. By the time I reached my car, my phone had 73 messages. Desperate apologies from my mother. Panicked calls from Charlotte explaining that she didn't know. Even Lord Pemberton's father had somehow gotten my number, asking about economic consulting for his investment firm. I deleted them all and drove to my office in Westminster where actual important work waited. The Chinese response came through at 11 p.m. They'd accepted our framework with minor modifications. The trade negotiations were saved. My phone buzzed with a text from the Prime Minister. Well done, Eleanor. Take tomorrow off. You've earned it. Also, your family are idiots. I've promoted advisors with less competence than you've shown in your worst week. The news broke by morning. Prime Minister crashes wedding to retrieve economic advisor hidden by family. The photos showed everything. The decorative screen at table 23, my mother's toast about disappointment, the moment when the Prime Minister had called out my family in front of 500 guests. Charlotte's perfect society wedding became infamous as the event where the bride's family hid the government's chief economic advisor behind a screen because they thought she was unemployed. My mother's social climbing turned to social falling in one evening. Lady Pemberton, it turned out, had very strong opinions about families who failed to recognize their own daughter's accomplishments. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from Charlotte. She was sorry. She hadn't understood. Could we rebuild our relationship? I filed it away without responding. Some relationships can't survive that level of dismissal. Some families only value you after powerful people validate your worth. Mine had hidden me behind screens and called me unemployed while I was literally preventing national economic crises. The decorative screen at table 23 had been their final statement about my value. The Prime Minister's arrival was the universe's response. I didn't need their approval. I had shaped economic policy that affected millions, earned respect from world leaders, and built a career that mattered. That was enough.